You think you ate breakfast alone this morning, quietly, just you, in your kitchen. But that isn't true. Look down at what you ate. It looks simple. One plate, a few ordinary things. Now start counting the hands. A farmer you'll never meet planted it. A stranger picked it. Another washed it. Another packed it. Another drove it through the dark while you slept. Then the people who built the roads it traveled, the trucks, the fuel, the shop that stocked the shelf. Count the strangers behind a single slice of toast, a single egg, a single sip of coffee, and you don't reach 10 or 100. You reach over 1,000. By the time you took your first bite, more than 1,000 people had already touched your breakfast. You sat down alone, but your table was crowded, and you never saw a single one of them. So let's start with what you think just happened. You woke up hungry. You opened a cupboard. You opened the fridge. You made something quick, toast, an egg, a cup of coffee. You ate it in a few quiet minutes. Maybe while scrolling, maybe staring at nothing. Then you rinsed the plate and moved on with your day. Simple, ordinary, forgettable. You have done it thousands of mornings in a row. And you have truly thought about it almost never. The food just appears. The shelf is always full. You never ask how it got there. So this morning, ask. Pick up one thing on that plate and follow it backward. Start with the coffee, that ordinary cup. Before it reached you, it sat on a shelf in a shop. Someone stocked that shelf in the early hours before you woke. Before that, it sat in the back of a delivery truck. Someone drove that truck through the night while your city slept. Before that, it waited in a vast warehouse. Workers there moved it, sorted it, and loaded it in shifts around the clock. Before that, it crossed an ocean in a steel container on a giant ship. A crew of strangers carried it across the water for weeks. Before that, it sat at a port, lifted by enormous cranes, operated by people you will never meet. And before all of that, it was a bean, on a farm, on another continent. Grown in a place you have probably never been. Picked by hand, often one cherry at a time. By a farmer and their family, bent in the sun for hours. People whose names you will never know. Who will never know that you, specifically, drank their work this morning. And that is just the coffee. Now do the same for the bread. The wheat was grown in a wide golden field, somewhere far away, planted, tended, and harvested across a whole season, cut by a machine the size of a house, built by thousands of workers in a factory in another country. The grain was milled into flour by more hands still, then mixed, shaped, and baked by a baker before dawn. Each loaf passing through dozens of people before it reached your toaster. And the egg, even the simple egg, from a hen on a farm, fed on grain that had its own long journey, collected, cleaned, graded, boxed, and shipped by yet more hands. 3 small items, already hundreds of people deep, but the chain runs deeper than the food itself. Someone built the truck that carried it. Someone mined the metal that became the truck. Someone drilled and refined the fuel that moved it all. Someone laid the roads it traveled on. Someone made the machines on the farm and the parts inside them. Someone made the fertilizer that fed the soil. Someone wove the sacks, printed the labels, sealed the boxes. Each of those people relied on others before them, a chain branching outward, wider and wider, the further back you look, reaching into mines, factories, fields, and ports across the whole planet, touching dozens of countries you never thought about once, all converging quietly onto one small plate. Yours, this morning. Count them honestly, every hand, and 1,000 is a low number. 1,000 strangers scattered across the world, most of them awake and working while you were still asleep, none of them knowing your name, none of them you'll ever thank. And yet, together, they fed you. A meal made by a crowd you never saw. Now here is the strangest part. This vast web is almost brand new. For nearly all of human history, it simply did not exist. Your ancestors ate only what grew close to them, what was in season, what the land nearby could give. A failed harvest meant hunger, sometimes worse. Coffee from another continent was unthinkable. Fresh fruit in the dead of winter was a fantasy. For most people, for most of time, breakfast was small, local, and uncertain. So how did your crowded table happen? Slowly, over centuries, the world learned to move food. First by sail, along long and dangerous trade routes, spices and goods crossing the world at great cost and risk. Then came the railroads, carrying food far inland, fast, for the first time. Then refrigeration, the power to keep food cold and fresh on the move. Suddenly, fruit could cross the world and arrive still good. And then, one humble invention changed almost everything. A simple steel box, the shipping container, a plain metal rectangle, all built to the same size. It could be stacked, lifted, and moved anywhere with ease. It made carrying goods across the planet astonishingly cheap. That dull metal box quietly reshaped the entire world. It is a huge reason your breakfast is possible at all. Then, farming itself transformed, growing more food than ever before. New seeds, new methods, feeding billions who could not have eaten otherwise. Piece by piece, the global food web was built, mostly by people whose names history never recorded. And the result is something genuinely new under the sun. Consider this. 300 years ago, the richest king on earth could not have eaten your breakfast. He could not get fresh fruit out of season. He could not get coffee carried fresh across an ocean in days. No crown, no army, no fortune could buy it. It did not yet exist, for anyone, at any price. And yet, you had it this morning, half asleep, without a thought, an ordinary breakfast that would have stunned an emperor. You are wealthier, in this one quiet way, than almost everyone who ever lived. Not because of anything you did, but because you were born into the finished web, handed a crowded table for free, and told it was normal. Now look even closer at the food itself, because each thing on your plate is its own quiet miracle. Start again with the bread. That grain began as a tiny seed in the dark soil, and a seed performs a kind of magic we take for granted. Using only sunlight, air, and water, the plant builds itself. It pulls light out of the sky and stores it as food. Every grain of wheat is a small package of captured sunlight. When you eat bread, you are eating sunshine, gathered weeks ago. But the bread had one more secret. It was alive. To make it rise, a baker added yeast. And yeast is not just a powder. It is a living thing, a tiny fungus, billions of them, woken in the dough. They feed and breathe out gas, and the bread puffs up. Your soft slice of toast was lifted by living creatures. Then the heat of the toaster worked another kind of magic. As bread browns, its surface transforms. Sugars and proteins rearrange into hundreds of new flavors. That golden, toasty taste is real chemistry, made by heat. The same reaction that browns a crust or a roasting meal. Now the coffee. Why does it wake you up? The bean carries a chemical called caffeine. But the plant did not make it for you. It made caffeine as a defense to poison the insects that ate it. You are drinking a plant's weapon, and it sharpens your mind. And the egg. The egg is astonishing. It is a complete, sealed kit for building a living creature. Everything an embryo would need, packed into one shell. A tiny, self-contained capsule of life and nourishment. You cracked it open this morning without a thought. Look at the whole plate again, now. Captured sunlight, living fungus, chemistry born of fire, a sealed vessel of life, a plant's chemical shield. None of it simple, all of it astonishing. And then your body does its own quiet work. It takes the food apart, piece by piece. It pulls the stored energy out of every bite. The sunlight the wheat caught becomes the energy you run on. It powers your heartbeat, your steps, your thoughts. Even the thought you are having right now, you did not feel any of it happen. The sorting, the burning, the building, all unseen inside you. Breakfast becomes you, quietly, while you go about your morning. The plate was never just food. It was sunlight, life, and chemistry handed to your body. Now pull back, as far as you can, and look at the whole system at once. Your single breakfast was one tiny endpoint of a machine that spans the entire planet. Every day, this machine feeds billions of people. Billions of breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. Every single day. Food flowing constantly across oceans and continents. Ships, planes, trucks, and trains, never stopping. A vast cold chain, keeping food fresh all the way from farm to shelf, timed so precisely that your shop is restocked before it runs out. You have almost never seen an empty shelf in your life. That is not an accident, it is an immense, hidden effort. A global machine running quietly in the background, always, so smooth that you forget it is even there, until, just once, something breaks. A storm, a blocked route, a sudden shortage, and a shelf goes bare, and you feel a flicker of the truth. How much quietly depends on this web holding together? It is one of the largest things humans have ever built, and almost no one ever thinks about it. But the machine carries a hard truth, too. This effortless abundance is not shared by everyone. The same world that overflows for some runs dry for others. Even now, hundreds of millions of people do not have enough food. Not because the world cannot grow it. The world grows more than enough for everyone alive. But the web does not reach every table equally. The same machine that fills your shelf leaves others empty. Your easy breakfast is not a given. It is a kind of fortune, one that much of humanity, even today, does not share. You were born near the full end of the web. Most people who have ever lived were not. So the crowded table you ignore is also a quiet privilege. Built by 1,000 strangers and promised to no one. Worth seeing clearly. Worth not wasting. The machine is staggering and generous and uneven all at once. It feeds more people than ever before in history, and still it does not reach them all. That, too, is part of what sits on your plate. The whole human story in a single ordinary meal. Now go further still, past the planet entirely, because the food on your plate did not truly begin on Earth. Remember the sunlight the wheat captured? That light came from the sun, and it crossed all of space to get here. In about 8 minutes, racing from the sun to the field. The energy in your breakfast is starlight, only minutes old. You are, quite literally, eating sunshine. But go deeper, down to the atoms in your food, the carbon, the oxygen, the very stuff of every bite. None of it was made on Earth either. It was forged long ago, inside ancient stars, cooked in their burning hearts, then scattered when they died. Those atoms drifted for ages and became this planet. They became soil and rain and then living plants, then grain, then bread, then, this morning, your breakfast. The carbon in your toast was once inside a star. You are eating the ashes of dead suns, warmed by a living one. And these atoms are not new. They have been used before. The same carbon has been a plant, an animal, a person, countless times. Borrowed for a while, then passed along, again and again. Your breakfast is a brief stop on a journey billions of years long. Sunlight from minutes ago, atoms from the dawn of time, gathered by plants, carried by strangers, cooked by you. All meeting for one moment on a single plate. The whole universe, quietly, in something you barely tasted. The sun's light, the star's dust, the earth's soil. 1,000 human hands, 10,000 years of effort. All of it folded into one ordinary breakfast that you ate in a few minutes, half awake, without ever knowing what you were holding. A plate that reached from the stars, to the field, to you. The most ordinary and most extraordinary thing in the world. So go back to the table. Look at your plate again, or the cup in your hand. It still looks completely ordinary. Toast, an egg, a little coffee, nothing special. But now you know what is really there. Sunlight, caught by a plant and stored as food. Atoms forged in stars at the beginning of time. A web of 1,000 strangers spread across the world. Centuries of invention handed to you for free. The work of farmers, drivers, sailors, and bakers you'll never meet. All of it gathered onto one small plate. You never ate alone this morning, not for a single second. Your table was crowded with the whole world, with the living and the long dead and the distant sun. You simply could not see them. That is what an ordinary breakfast really is. Not simple, not nothing, a quiet gathering of everything. So tomorrow, before your first bite, pause for just 1 second. And picture the 1,000 hands that brought it to you, the field, the ship, the star. You will never eat an ordinary breakfast again. The invisible world is all around you. Now go and see it.